Welcome everyone to this conversation about trauma awareness and practices for inclusion of marginalized communities. We are Luz Olid and David Caballero, founders of Evolving Education Social Action, and your hosts in today's webinar. This session is part of Project NADYW, Nature and Awareness Driven Wellbeing for Youth Workers, an Erasmus project co-funded by the European Union and focused on improving the well-being of youth workers. The goal of this project is to take care of those who take care of others. As part of it, we want to bring awareness about some key elements that can nurture our well-being so that we can become role models of well-being for youth. Each podcast is supported by a step-by-step guide so that you can move to action easily. You can already find it and download this PDF guide in the description of this video if you're watching us on YouTube, or in NADYW's website if you're listening to the podcast.
Yes. And today's guest brings a deep, grounded, and truly compassionate lens to the heart of what we explore in this series, that is learning and healing in community. Beivin Elvin Tunk is a sociologist specialized in migration and intercultural education, originally from Turkey and now living in Germany. And she has worked across multiple contexts, from refugee camps to university, and her approach blends coaching, listening circles, mindfulness, and relational practices with a really clear focus on preventing trauma before it takes root. So thank you very much, Beivin, for joining us today.
Hi, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
And we always start with, who are you? We want to know the stories that is behind each person. So we would love to hear about your story. What took you to do the different things that you have been doing, and what brought you to the field of migration and intercultural education?
Yeah. Thank you for the space, and thank you for introducing myself also, like how I found myself in the more migration intercultural education, because I really found myself like it was like unintentionally. Suddenly I woke up with it kind of a story. But I think my journey into migration and intercultural education began long before I ever named in such. Growing up in Turkey, a country really layered with so many histories, languages, and stories, I was surrounded with diversity every day, and living in such a crossroads of civilizations through history naturally made me curious about people, cultures, the way how they connect with each other, how they misunderstand each other perfectly, and also like break through conflicts or not break through any conflicts. So over time, I realized that culture is often treated as something tied to nationality or borders, as if only belongs to one country. But for me, culture has always been more tangible, more human. It lives in the way that people share food, like tell stories, raise kids, or express their care. Even within one family, two parents can carry entirely different cultural words. So even they come from the same country or society. So in a way, I believe we are all born into intercultural learning, and it really starts at home, like the smallest space of our everyday life. And when I began studying sociology at Middle East Technical University in Ankara, I wanted to understand how people make meaning, how societies hold together, how inequality and belonging shape human experience, actually. And I was very fascinated about the questions on justice, empathy, what it really means to live together across differences, and how humans break through the conflicts that history brings. And then when I graduated, it was the year 2015, and also the year the war in Syria that displaced millions. So Turkey suddenly became home to over 2 million refugees at that year only, and Europe began to respond with urgency. And it was a time when no one really knew that what integration means, what support means, what are we going to do in such a big scale. So there was a confusion, a need, and also a bit of opportunity all at once. And I found myself right in the middle of it as a fresh sociology graduate. And I began working with an NGO under a UNICEF project focusing on children, youth, and families affected by displacement. At that time, most of the existing materials, like coming from disaster management models, something very really a bit irrelevant context, like from Haiti or something that is not fitting to this context. So like since it's coming from that, but forced migration is especially caused by war, is completely another scenario, completely needs another responses. So leaving your home, your country, your memories behind, in it's not a one-time event, you know, it reshapes your entire sense of identity and safety. So I joined a team tasked with rethinking and contextualizing these materials into more Turkish and Syrian contexts, and we started designing psychosocial support programs for refugees and asylum seekers at that time, and creating tools that address emotional resilience, belonging, and constructing new life. It was where I first discovered the power of facilitation without naming it. I am like, since maybe last 7 years, I'm saying that, oh, I'm a facilitator. That's facilitation means, or I'm a youth worker. That kind of things come very later after I practice these things actually. So I really discovered the power of facilitation that time without naming it, how creating a safer space, asking good questions, inviting people to share their own wisdom can be very, very transformative, actually. And those years were intense and formative. I started traveling to trainings, checking other countries, what they are doing, like how I can adapt it into my context and so on. So I really meet with other facilitators. I start learning through more non-formal education and more experiential education methods, which was very fascinating experience for me, because I'm really following a very formal education path. Then I realized, wow, education is very broad, and I can really take some of that, mix with it in that context especially. So I realized that like learning doesn't just happen in the classrooms. It happens in circles, in conversations, and in the moments that people start being truly feel heard. So at some point, I also, like, I'm a very analytical person, so I'm like, okay, like I need also a bit of formal education, like enough non-formal. Okay, let's take a bit like that. So I wanted to deepen my work academically, and I applied for European Master in Migration and Intercultural Relations. It's called EMIR program, and it's an Erasmus Mundus program where I studied across Germany, Norway, Uganda, and Slovenia. And it was a very global and deeply human experience that I finally connected migration, education, social transformation, and in a way that I didn't imagine before, because it gave me a very different education methods come together. It gives me a space to combine all the things that I collected through years. So it was very nice to focus on my thesis also about teaching migration, how we teach migration, which really reflected my belief that migration itself is one of humanity's greatest teacher. It is existential, it is essential, and it carries so much resilience and resistance in. Since then, my path has continued to evolve. I now define myself as a facilitator, learning experience designer, and professional coach. And each of these roles is a continuation of the same journey. That's why I wanted to keep it a bit longer to see how it is accumulated, how I find myself in it, and so on. And each of these roles is bringing people together, helping them listen deeply, and co-creating learning spaces where empathy, dialogue, and transformation can root. So in a way, I didn't choose this field, but it unfolded naturally out of curiosity, necessity, and deep conviction that learning across cultures is not only possible, but essential to share humanity.
Wow, thank you so much, baby, for sharing. Amazing journey, amazing journey. And I cannot imagine that situation of being finishing sociology, you know, all these theories of how the human minds and the societies evolve, and now suddenly the Syrian crisis, refugees, thousands. I don't. I think you said how many people were there in Turkey
In
at that time?
2015, it was 2 million, like
Two
really
million
the floods.
refugees.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what did you learn from that experience of working with migrants, refugees, especially with women and young people?
Yeah. Um, like as you said, it was really like a sudden thing for us, and it was unexpected. Also, human-wise, like it was the first time that that much people needed to fled. So, so for me, as you said, David, like with theories, you know, you know the sociological things. You read Foucault's, Butler's, I don't know, Kant, Aristotle, whatever, and then you come into the middle of it, and it was like, okay, I am just 22, and I am like kind of nothing like this, like as also comparing to the experience of this woman, young people. So it took also long transformative journey for myself, like not only transformative for them, but also very challenging and changing me. In the beginning, early 20s, as I said, let's say I carried a very strong desire to help, fix, saving the world, you know, like make things better. And I think many of us at that time enter this field has this impulse of, I want to be useful. But over time, I had to confront what that really mean. I realized that part of my need to help was most about me, actually. It's really connecting with me, and about feeling purposeful, needed, perhaps even validated through others' pain. So I really need to confront that feelings, that vulnerabilities in myself, like really putting the mirror to my face. So it was not easy, and that realization was not easy, and it forced me to see how systems, including humanitarian sector, in humanitarian ones, can unconsciously reproduce the cycle of saviors and victims. And even with the best intentions, we can take up too much space from the people. So, or solutions, or frameworks, or expertise, or SOPs, or toolkits, and so on, leaving little room for people to lead their own healing, their own sense making. And I began to see that empowerment cannot be given, it has to be reclaimed. And our role is to make that possible, not to direct it or not to give as a present. So that was a very breakthrough experience for me. And also I also started questioning some vocabulary, like giving space. It sounds generous, but subtly it implies ownership. That space belongs to us and we are choosing to share it, kind of a vibe. And I've learned, instead of think more, like I changed that vocabulary with more holding space, creating a shared meeting point where people can come together, listen, witness, and coexist, as much as less hierarchical and judgmental way. And this shift changed everything in my practice. For example, instead of coming with answers, I began coming with more questions. Instead of trying to do something for people, I try to be with them, to listen deeply enough that they could hear themselves again, to see that resilience doesn't need to build, but it already exists in all of us, actually. And quietly but powerfully, it exists in all of us. And in our stories, humor, everyday acts of care, it is there. And through this work, I also realized that I am constantly unlearning, examining my own bias, but privilege, assumptions. I'm learning how to decolonize my practice in a way, to recognize when I'm centering myself rather than the community that I'm working, or to cultivate spaces that are both safer and braver as much as I can. And as a facilitator, my role is not to provide answers, but invite a reflection. And I believe that questions are more fertile than answers, and they are open, they are flexible questions, but answers are more close and narrow and full of assumptions. And answers have an expiration date, so it can expire, it can change according to context or time, but questions continue to grow, provoke, and connect. So what I learned from this experience, especially working with migrants, refugees, and women and children, or people in vulnerable situation in that point in life, maybe humility. The meaningful change doesn't came from saving or solving, but from witnessing, listening, taking a step back, and creating space where people remember their own strength, not giving them, like not empowering, not shaking them, but having a space that they can do that for themselves, from inner self. Like, I think that was a very hard and changing experience for me that I learned from this group, let's say.
Wow, I'm amazed. No, it's
Really?
amazing because it's precisely like some of the, through also all our facilitation and so on, we have also kind of reached to similar conclusions, no? That holding a space, a safe and brave space, and then this thing is, it's not about me. It's about
Yeah.
the other person, so I need to listen and to ask questions. And yeah, how when we start asking questions, like the whole the it's like possibilities open up. Because if I give a solution, is what you said, it is a solution that comes from my experience, which is really narrow and really different to that experience that that person has lived. So then,
Yeah.
yeah, completely obviously, the decisions that they take, they are experts in their lives. I am not.
Yeah.
I am expert in my life, and they are experts in their lives. So yeah, that
Mhm.
amazing. And that part of the humility, I love. I love that you also said weakness, because it's like I also find now a lot of, yeah, that the ability to be in that space of witnessing what is going on, and at the same time holding that space, and also realizing what is happening inside and what is happening outside. It's a complete dance in which we are present for the other person. And I think that that's one of the biggest gifts, no, that presence and listening carefully, with compassion and love. So wow, amazing. And related to all that, um it comes to me like, what how the definition of belonging has changed for you. What does belonging means? And also, particularly when you have been living across different cultures and identities, how does have evolved?
Yeah, like I really like the vocabulary that use dancing. Like really belonging turned into be a dance for me also, because for me, belonging is not something that you encounter on the way and say hi or something or inherit by chance. It is something that you create and again and again. Like it's like diminishing, recreating, and always questioning and so on. So it's not fixed or singular. It's very fluid, it's relational and ever changing, like dance. And in my experience, belonging can really exist in multiple places. That's why I'm still reminding myself. When I fall down, like I'm always not that comfortable all the time and so on. But I always try to remind myself that it exists in multiple places with multiple people and in different moments of your own becoming in your process. It's not about fitting neatly into one box or being accepted by a one group, but it's more like a co-creating relationships where you are not only accepted but also celebrated for who you are and what you bring. And what I mean is celebrated, I mean that our differences aren't simply tolerated or politely acknowledged. They like like presence is seen as a contribution and as a color that enrich the shared picture. To be celebrated in belonging is to be met with curiosity instead of caution, like to have your story received with interest rather than judgment, and to know that your presence adds something meaningful to the collective. So that's what I mean by celebration. And growing up in Turkey, a place layered with cultures, contradictions, and very high polarization, I was surrounded by many definitions of identity and surrounded by many people who are against some of my identities I was carrying with me. There have been many times that I felt as an outsider, external, foreigner in my own country where I was born and raised, and later living in Germany, Belgium, and other places I've lived, I realized this feeling follows me actually. So it's not about only in Turkey, like which was the safest place for me for a while, but then I realized this feeling of, wait, where am I from? What am I doing? Where are my roots? Like, am I alone? And that kind of non-belonging feelings follow me. And on the other hand, there are moments that I felt so home in a very random corner on the world that I have no connection at all. Then I start questioning that maybe this belonging doesn't come from sameness. Belonging is not tied to a geography, passport, or a shared language, but it's built through relationships, through care, through the courage to stay open and honest to yourself. And when I question what are those moments when I feel home, when I feel belonging most, is when I'm listened deeply, actually, when my stories are received with presence, and when how I tell them, like, like you already recognize I'm like really like this with my hands, with my gestures, and so on. I'm that kind of a active person. I cannot like do this. So then I realize it's very important for me that my rhythm, my emotions, my gestures, how I tell my story, and also my silence, not only the things that I say, but how I am like not talking, my presence is respected. So belonging happens in those between moments, in joke that bridge differences, in silences that feel safe, in witnessing just as I am. And over time, I really learned that belonging also carries responsibility. It's not just about finding a place that include me, but also learning how to include others. So belonging is also not only feeling, but also sharing for me. So both in my life and work, sharing space becomes such an important thing that also encouraged my own belonging. And as a facilitator and coach, I see belonging as a living practice. So one that we sustain through listening, curiosity, shared presence. It's not about agreeing or being the same. It's about staying in a relationship, even though discomfort. I've come to believe that belonging doesn't begin with similarity. It begins with listening. It's when we listen deeply with care, we start building many small homes of belonging, actually, with ourselves, between each other, and also across differences, I will say. So belonging that's how I dance with belonging. Sometimes I stumble, but usually I try to remember that, yeah, you will find your little homes. You will create. You need to be active to create it.
Thank you so much, baby. I found myself very identified with what you
Yeah.
were sharing because Luz and I, we have also lived in lots of different places, being originally from Spain, but we've been in the UK, in Belgium. We traveled a good amount of time across India and in Mexico as well. Also an exchange program in the US, like lots of different
Mm.
cultures. But as you said, I think that that belonging piece, it was really about relationships, about feeling connected with other human beings, and having a spaces to share. That's what made a massive difference beyond the food and the language and many other things. If we had people that we could connect with, or I could connect with, then I felt more at home, and at peace. And then this brings me to
Once
the
I
yeah.
think that a key word there is the authenticity, no? That we can be
Mm.
authentic, we can be
Mhm.
ourselves, and then we are like people is curious about who is our authentic selves, and then that is like, okay, I am
Mhm.
home.
Yeah, and people that it can happen naturally that they don't feel at home are migrants, international students as well, and in different universities, refugees. So and there's actually not just there, but there are many people who feel that they don't quite fit. And I feel like there's a sense, in particularly in young people, of a growing sense of many people that feel that they don't fit. So, what kind of support do you think that they need most?
Mhm. Um, yeah, like I think authenticity is a very important word that how you can bring authenticity in a place that you don't quite
Apologies, I
fit.
think that was me who deactivated your microphone.
Ah, when we talk about listening, David.
Sorry.
No, no, I just realized. Yeah, like I think authenticity is a very important word. That's how like you can bring authenticity in a place that you don't quite fit. That's also like also traveling from different there, like adapting all the time and so on. So especially people who move across borders, whether migrants, international students, or refugees, often carry invisible layers of uncertainty and pressure of it. So they are navigating new systems, language, expectations, and on top of that, their identities and histories can feel constantly not visible or unknown. So what they need most is not just practical support, but a space that exists fully to feel seen, heard, valued, and be try to bring their authentic selves actually. So systems often reduce these people to a paperwork, numbers, labors, like some research material, and so on. But in that context, recognition of their stories, perspectives, the wisdom of they may bring, the potential usually being perceived as a less important or last on the priority list. But actually, it is super important that needed to prevention bigger reactions. Like what I mean as reaction can be a burnout, radicalization, trauma, segregation. You can name more. So this is why I focus on creating what I call safer and braver spaces. And it's not me only calling, it's known like that, but not just safe or brave, because those words can imply absolute and perfection. Like this safe, I provide you a safe space and so on. And I'm like, who am I to provide a safe space? Like, am I feeling safe in the first place? So safer implies a continuous process, a space that is actively held and maintained, where people can slowly risk actually showing themselves without judgment. And braver signals encouragement to step into authenticity, to reveal thoughts and emotions that may feel vulnerable, yet in a supported and relational context. So I find it very important to have hold that safer and braver spaces that are cultivating trust, curiosity, mutual witnessing, and a bit a pause from constant evolution of like performance, like being a trying to fit in is a performance like that. So it provides a bit of pause at the end. And um, these moments, unfortunately, are dismissed as a wasted time in this kind of transition periods, especially when you are a foreigner or navigating systems that demand efficiency. But in my experience, these breathing spaces, let's call it, relational spaces for reflection, listening, a bit of experimentation, safe to fail spaces are what prevent the future losses. They help people to reconnect with themselves, with their agency, and yeah, like it's like basically like onboarding them to the communities they're and entering, but also onboarding communities that opening a space for them. So for me, the most powerful support isn't giving answers or solving problems. It is facilitating the conditions for people to discover and reclaim and transform themselves, even in the middle of this complete uncertainty. So I will underline the safer and braver spaces, how we can open that spaces, how we can co-create these spaces, which is usually unforgotten between this bureaucracy, cultural, food, tasting, I don't know, traveling, whatever, negative or positive outcomes of trying to fit process.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Fantastic. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how does that compassionate listening that you were talking about before helps in preventing trauma, no? Especially with people in those vulnerable community situations.
Compassionate, or sometimes I call it like heartfelt listening. What means like listening with the ear of the heart, or what I exactly do is listening circles. Is about being really fully present with someone without trying to fix, analyze, solve their situation. It's a simple yet powerful act, allowing someone to be heard, acknowledged, witnessed. And in communities facing exclusion, displacement, or systemic violence, this kind of listening can restore a sense of dignity and connection, which are very essential foundations for belonging and resilience, as we talked before. So I often integrate coaching practices, mindfulness, embodied reflection into these spaces to help people to reconnect actually with their own inner resources. The goal is never to heal someone else. That was a bit cross also to clinical territory, I have to say, but like but to create a professional, carefully designed environment where people can access their own wisdom, their own agency, their own capacity for support, is very important to really clean that space before it happens, to prevent it actually. One insight that I profoundly shaped my understanding when it's connected with trauma came from Gabor Mate. Like trauma is not what happened to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happened. So it's a bit what's happening here. So for me, listening is a gateway to that insight. It opens the door to noticing, processing, and connecting with what lives within. But I want to be very clear about that. This is non-clinical approach, which I find it also important because I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, and so on. And the spaces I facilitate are not therapy sessions. So they are intentionally designed, professional facilitated, environments where participants can explore their experiences safely and respectfully. And as a facilitator, you are very walking on a thin ice on that space, like especially working with people in vulnerable situations, and when we are talking about trauma sensitive facilitation and so on, it's very thin ice. You need to know your professional boundaries as well as your human limits. These practices are not casual gatherings where people share traumatic stories over coffee or something. It's very important to highlight that in my eyes. And these practices are, they are spaces that are created with care, with structured methods, with attention to safety, consent, and support. And the purpose is preparation and resilience. The more regularly people engage in being seen, heard, reflected back to themselves in these spaces, the more skillful they become at connecting with their own inner resources that we mentioned at the beginning when the challenging moment arises. In short, like compassionate listening doesn't prevent trauma in the sense of shielding people like from harm or but like no, nothing can happen or something. It doesn't have a mission like that, or it cannot also, it has limits, but it nurtures readiness, resilience, and self connection, and it's a practice for making this insight reachable. So, a way of being prepared to meet life's difficulties with presence, more clarity, and grounded sense of self. So, the goal is never to heal someone else, but is to create a space where people can access their own healing and their own potential and wisdom. So again, I'm coming to the safer and braver spaces through this listening circles as a prevention, actually, before things has happened. So you're ready for it. At least you know where to touch.
Yeah. And in that circles, how do you set the tone to create that safe sharing and that not judgmental presence? No, how do
Hmm.
you how do you do
Yeah. Like yeah, like setting this tone starts from the beginning, actually. So, like, before anyone speaks, it needs to be set a bit with the atmosphere and so on. Like I'm always like, it's not set and it will be never be there, but I am trying to be as close as I can, and because I'm not taking trust. Not assuming there will be trust. I'm not taking trust as a granted thing. I'm not expecting that people will come and we will trust each other and so on, because trust is earned, trust is reciprocal and co-created. So I don't also take trust personally. I see this as a dynamic atmosphere, a shared group energy, actually, rather than one-to-one exchanges. And from the very first invitation to the setup of the space, every detail communicates a message about how people are welcome, seen, and valued. I always approach safety as something we work on together, something that I need to earn, everyone needs to earn, kind of like that. So I don't promise a complete safe space, because no space can ever be perfectly safe. So because we are all different backgrounds and we all have different triggers. So instead, I frame it as a joint effort, and like asking questions like, what can we do to make this space as safe as we can together? That kind of word tricks, like really including them in the process. And this acknowledges the reality of the risk, vulnerability, and human unpredictability, while still giving room for courage and trust to grow. I do listening circles, and the circle itself is also very important methodology in that regard, because it's really like a circle like this, sitting in a round shape. Everyone is on the same level, equally distant from the center, immediately communicates also equally, and it's like a presence, like how you make the physical thing also gives, okay, there is something we will sit near. Like, it's not like someone is going to teach me, not like receiving and giving relation, but I am part of it already. So this visual and physical equality sets a horizontal tone from the start. And at the beginning of each session, I co-create group agreements with participants. Together, we talk about confidentiality, deep listening, permission to pause also, and honoring the silence. So silence is very essential part of the practice. It's never something to rush or feel. It's sometimes very uncomfortable for myself or for the people when silence is happening. Everyone's panicking, like I need to feel and so on. But waiting, holding space, listening to the silence are just as important as what has been spoken. So we also use grounding exercises, like guided meditation, breathing, mute music, free flow writing. Sometimes I even use room odor or something, like to make it claim you are in a different space now, like we are out somehow, and so on. So everyone arrive in present and settle into the group energy. Of course, like group dynamics is also important. So like, especially in this vulnerable context, I don't need to do it in a very 30 people talking about their own things. It's not that easy. So I also shift between larger groups, sometimes pairs, sometimes smaller clusters. This ensures that everyone has an opportunity to speak also if they wish, without any pressure. And also that attention is not only focused on the topic, it's also about the lived experience of the practice. So the experiential nature of this exercise means that experience itself is a teacher. I never claim knowledge or prescribe some answers to them, do it at home kind of a thing. But participants are invited to notice how they feel, how they relate, how the energy and the circle evolves. Like, yeah, I think in summary, the best part of this practice is transformation happens very quietly. People who are initially hesitant to find their voices, that the groups we are talking is a bit like that also. It's not easy to speak up with that identities. So when they listen deeply to the others and also themselves, connect across differences, it's really subtle but a powerful shift. So the circle, the agreements, the small rituals that I mentioned, like the attention to the presence, all contribute to a group where we trust, safety, courage can a bit at least find a place to flourish compared to the real outside world, let's say it that way. So I separate them a bit with these tricks.
No.
Thank you
Mm.
very much for sharing. And so many practices that seem like sometimes you hear them, it's like, oh, co-creating agreements and creating a circle, but actually doing this in a manner that people really feel welcome and feel included and feel that they are their agreements and it's their space and so on. It takes a lot of experience, I think, lots of trying, grounding yourself. We have a comment actually from one of the people that are listening to us from Bahab. He said that he's so proud to listen to you, baby, as a therapist, because well-being does not belong to us only. This needs a team composed by teachers, social workers, officials. So yeah, completely agree that this is really a team effort to support the well-being of society, going through the different layers. And as I say this, I know that this requires a lot of inner work, like to be really present for others and to be really grounded and being able to actually listen to very hard stories, and to know exactly how to guide and hold that space so that it still feels not judgmental. That means a lot of inner work. So what practices support you? How do you prepare? How do you take care of yourself, of your own well-being, so that you can support others?
Mhm. I really agree what you have said, and also I really agree with the comment that I think it was Wahab made. Its well-being is very connected, not only like really like it cannot separate it from my work. You know, like it's really part of it. So I've been working with vulnerability since I was 18, both personally and professionally. So it's not a alone practice. So like every like as the comment, psychologists, therapists, social workers, like all these people who are working for mental health and maybe not only health but also well-being, let's say, is very connected and very layered. So I also benefit from that practices, you know, like I am part of it as a practitioner, but I'm also benefiting so many different experiences because I'm limited. So I am really working both internally, as David you said, and also professionally with my own vulnerabilities and those of others. So over time I realized that This work doesn't make you tougher, and but it makes you more vulnerable. And it is not a bad thing to be vulnerable. It's not. I don't need to be strong. I don't need to be like all the time, like never cry. Like I can listen all the stories or something. Like on the contrary, the more vulnerable I became, the more compassionate I become to the others. So more aware of my limits and my strengths make me even more stronger about knowing it. Like so I started on the protection side when I start working, doing child protection, working on cases and like very child abuse cases that time and trying to solve things. And but the real shift happened when I stopped trying to fix or teach or began to focus like shifting to the focus on holding space for people to learn without being taught, like to find their own answers, to hold space for one another. So when I moved from solving to listening, the heaviness of my work also began to transform, I have to say. As a professional coach now, I appreciate how coaching also emphasizes curiosity, forward movement. It's about really unlocking potential rather than diagnosing problems. So it really lifted me up, I have to say. And the power of coaching lies in the questions, not in the answers. A single powerful question can open more doors than a dozen of solutions. So I discovered that deep listening is very transformative because being listened, like think about yourselves, not as a professional, but being listened can be really enlightening, very lifting, empowering, and even healing. At least it has been for me. So when someone truly listens to you, you start seeing yourself more clearly. If you ask me what I do today, I would say I'm a professional listener, behind this all this like experience, education, and so on. I'm a very professional listener. So and also creativity and humor sustain me too, I have to say. I cannot live without them. They are my oxygen. So I bring curiosity, playfulness, and joy into my work, no matter that context, because each of us has that inside of us. So why not bringing it externally? So these qualities don't keep me balanced. They are also expressed into spaces that I hold. They remind me that learning and healing don't always need to be heavy, like don't always need to hurt. It can be alive, imaginative, and even fun. And becoming a migrant myself added another layer, I have to say. It taught me to sustain my sense of self while constantly adapting, and to hold on what feels essential and let go what no longer serves. So I learned that. So I often think my life is a practice of transformation, and how many me's I can find within myself. So how many times I can dissolve, how many times I can rebuild myself. So it gives very authenticity is a living process. So listening myself, it gives me such a strong thing that I'm thinking wherever I go, if I know myself, if I can bring my authenticity, the belonging topic that we talked in the beginning, I'm okay. Like, and yes, I also do yoga, write morning pages, even drink matcha and so on. Like, but yeah, like, beyond these rituals, I truly sustain what I love. And maybe ask me in 5 years, maybe the answer will be completely changing. But for now, this balance between authenticity, curiosity, and creativity is keeping me alive and bringing other practices in my practices with peers and so on. So I know I'm not alone.
Hmm, wonderful. And thank you for sharing that keyword of being a professional listener, because I feel like that's one of the key things that everyone that's working in this space of youth work, social innovation, and in education as well, it's something that we really need to master. And also for sharing, even though you said them very quickly, yoga, meditation, and so on, but those rituals, right? Having
Yeah.
a few daily rituals for well-being, I found it to be transformative more for myself. Because as you said, there's all these other things that you're balancing and jumping in and getting out, and then something unexpected that happens. But having there some daily practices helps to build a sense of inner stability, perhaps that then it can be transferred to other spaces. And taking it back to education, and I know that you have focused on how to teach migration, for instance. So what advice do you give to people that support others in emotionally heavy context?
Mhm. Once in a podcast about facilitation, like I wish to remember who said it, but it really the guest mentioned something that deeply stayed with me. Like facilitation may look like an external skill, but it's actually an internal practice. So people often imagine facilitation or education is something that you do to guide others, designing sessions, managing group dynamics. Yeah, it's true, but in truth, the most meaningful education or facilitation starts really inside the way that we relate ourselves with our emotions, our own boundaries, and our own stillness. That's what shapes how we hold space for others. That's why I also sometimes do coaching for facilitators, more facilitation coach, and supporting their not only external skills but also internal selves. So it's really starts with internal facilitation. So you cannot hold space for others if you don't know how to hold space for yourself. So my first piece of advice is simple: pause, build small rituals before and after sessions, take a breath, ground yourself, notice what's alive in you. Even a few moments of awareness can make a difference how you show up. How you express the vocabulary that you choose. So because it's coming from inner, so you really need to check in with inner and knowing, okay, that's me. That's not the students, that's not the participants, that part is about me, kind of taking it. Second, don't carry it alone, especially working in like emotionally heavy contexts. Create your own circle of care, peers, mentors, friends you can really debrief with. Like collective care isn't a luxury, it's part of a professional ethics. When we hold space together, the weight becomes lighter and the insights actually become deeper. So, like, really don't think you are alone, find your circles. And third, maybe honor your limits. You don't have to fix everything or have the perfect response, all the answers. Sometimes silence is the most generous thing you can offer. As we talk about witnessing, presence matters far more than performance. So sometimes witnessing is can be enough. And finally, what I truly believe in, experience is the real teacher, like for both participants or students or yourself as educators or facilitators or youth workers. So we don't transmit knowledge, we co-create meaning. That should be the task, or education that I believe in or I would like to practice. So each group, each session teaches us something new about ourselves also. So be curious, stay open, let the process also work in you, not only giving and giving. So, as we talk so much about dancing, facilitation to me is a dance between holding and letting go. And the more we listen inwardly, the more grounded and compassionate we can be outwardly, if there's a word like that. But you understand the meaning. Yeah.
Completely. Wow. No, it's amazing because all the things that you are sharing completely resonate with the facilitation in education also. And I'm wondering, like, probably this is the when we hold those spaces where people feel can be those safe and brave spaces is where people can actually learn, and there is not that difference between learning and living. It's something that we do all the time. So yeah, it's completely essential to create those conditions for people to thrive and to find who they are and who they want to be, and to find their passions and to find that calmness and that states that allows them to be present and kind of, I don't want to say happy, but at least content with themselves, no, like creating those like the soil, preparing the soil so those things can happen. And I was just amazed with the similarities that of the things that we share in education with the things that you were sharing. Is like, wow, that it's amazing. Because it seems that it's probably where that fertile soil. So it's creating a fertile soil where all these things can happen. And we were
True.
wondering also of any other small but powerful practices that you can recommend to the audience, or you have shared about that pausing and reflecting more deeply. But if is there anything else that you would like to add there?
Like first of all, I really like the metaphors that I wish I wouldn't be the guest, but I will be the listener to take some notes of the metaphors to use it later, like the soil, like the content is very nice vocabulary, like exactly what I want to describe and so on. So, really, I love the vocabulary and thank you for that. And maybe like additional thing to like posing and asking what's alive in me right now kind of question, checking in with yourself. Another way another way that I invite deeper listening, especially in the context of migration or many vulnerable situations, let's say, is listening with the ear of the heart. And it's an invitation to put aside the stories we tell ourselves about the others. It's an invitation to listen with pure curiosity. And maybe next time you begin listening to another person, like Luz and David, you and also whoever listens that, maybe you can really before listening someone else, you can ask yourself, like, can you hear the other person without predicting their next sentences? We have like really like listening habits that we do like internally. So I'm going to a bit flag them out. So bear that in mind when you have the time to listen another, you bear these things in mind. And can you hear the other person without predicting the next sentence, without preparing your answer while they're talking? Can you simply hold space for what they want to be heard, not what you want to hear? These are very like flex, like that. So, and now what is said, and not also only what it's said, but also seeing the unsaid in a conversation, the pauses, the looks, the tone. Can you just be there, witnessing without trying to fix, correct, or solve anything? This kind of listening is a practice, like a muscle. The more conscious we train it, it's like it needs a fitness kind of a thing. So the more we train it, the stronger it becomes, and it's especially needed in the experiences like migration, which touch everything, every part of your life. You cannot escape from it. So being a migrant is rarely just about moving physically. It often means not being heard, not being understood, or being misunderstood, carrying feelings that cannot be put into words. And being separated from your own language. In those moments, having someone truly listen without judgment, without interruption, patiently, opens a quiet space for healing and presence. So, if you would like to try it, here's a simple maybe exercise you can do with someone next time. Very simple. Shut your mouth and just listen. Like I said it roughly and roughly, but really like hear it when you listen to someone. No interruptions. It's an exercise. You have someone in front of you. You ask a question, not like, we always say, how are you? Thank you, fine, and you. Like very fruitful discussion. Thank you so much, kind of like that. But going a bit deeper level, like questions that can be asking the same thing, but a different thing that I use is how is it for you to be you in these days? Like it sounds very complicated, but actually I'm asking, how are you? Like, how is it for you to be you in these days? Ask this question to a friend or whoever you want, and try to really like close your mouth. No interruptions, no comments, no suggestions, no preparing your next answer. Try to just be there silently listening that. And you can set a timer for 3 minutes or something, and try to listen under this rule, and really notice your impulses, like what is coming, like you are really holding, like you are sweating, you cannot hold it because it's so hard, we are so ready, automatically boom 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 like this. But really just realizing it, just realizing yourself, and really identify what is trying to get out. Suggestions, solutions, next sentence. I was not doing like comparison. Like just notice what is trying to get out and what it tells about you, you know? And what happens to you when you simply hold the space, watch other person, how they really talk without intervention like that. So really try this exercise and see what is inside of you. It's different to people. That's why it's important to notice it and say, like, really connect what it tells about you actually. Are you always the solver? Are you always suggester? Are we always the leader, organizer, controller? Like this is all here trying to come out. So just maybe a simple exercise that you can try. I'm doing this kind of exercise in my circles. So yeah,
Amazing. Thank you very much. I love the question. What is it for you to be you these days?
yeah,
It just it transmits a deep sense of caring for the answer, actually, to be there to listen to the other person. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing all these ideas, Bayun, and
Thank you.
all that I heard from this in this last question was really about how to get ready to be a better listener each time, no? To
Mhm,
understand our
mhm,
triggers, our prompts, our need for solving the other person, or our challenges with silence, or all these different elements that help us to hold that safe space in a better way, no? Every time being able to be more of a professional listener, as you said, that's a great term. We got
yeah,
also in the comments in YouTube, Iana, who mentioned that. Thank you
yeah.
for the reminder that to be a professional listener, it's a key part of being an educator and a youth worker these days. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us. It was an amazing
Thank you.
conversation. So much wisdom that you brought today, and all how all these experiences are interconnected. Thank you very much for sharing with all of us, and definitely let's stay in contact.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
It was amazing. Thank you very much, baby.
Thank you, Luz. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. Take
And if you
care.
want to go deeper into these topics, you can download the PDF guide about trauma awareness, which goes into your own identifying your own traumas first, to then being able to talk with other people about these topics in the YouTube description and in NADYW's website. Thank you very much for listening. Bye bye.
Mm.